Silicon Valley Leadership Group.
Well, good evening and welcome to the CEO Show, a talk show about Silicon Valley for Silicon Valley here on 1590 KLIV. I'm your host tonight, Dennis Chima, Senior Vice President of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. I'm filling in for your regular host, Carl Guardino. It's great to be with you again, and thank you for listening to the CEO Show. Happy New Year to all of our listeners, and we really appreciate your joining us here on 1590 KLIV. I'm sure I'm maybe the first, if not the 700th person to wish you and yours a Happy New Year. Let me remind you, as you heard in the intro, that you can join our dialogue here on 1590 KLIV by calling our show at 408-475-1590. And our show, as you may know, features incredible folks from the private and public sectors who are shaping our valley. And that tradition will continue in 2013 and continue indeed tonight with Tim Ritchie, the president of the Tech Museum of Innovation here in San Jose. I think we're just going to have an incredible time learning a little bit more about our new executive director, president, and chief executive officer here at the Tech Museum, Tim Ritchie. Tim, welcome to the CEO Show.
Thanks a lot, Dennis. Great to be here.
Great to have you, and we'd love to tell our listeners a little bit more about your background. You've only been leading the Tech Museum for just less than a year and a half now. From where did you come before you were at the Tech Museum?
Well, Dennis, I'm a lawyer by training, so I practiced law in North Carolina and Birmingham, Alabama. I left my law practice to work in public housing in Birmingham for many years, and there kind of developed a love for organizational leadership and also human development. And I found over the years that the place where I feel the most comfortable is the intersection between society and learning. And that naturally drew me over the years to museums and then to science centers. I ran a science center in Birmingham, Alabama, and then was recruited to come here to head up the tech.
And that was McWane Science Center?
McWane Science Center in Birmingham, yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
McWane opened at the same time the new building of the tech opened, 1998.
Wow.
And it's kind of a one-stop shop in Birmingham. So it's both the Science Center, the Children's Museum, Natural History, and an aquarium, the state's largest aquarium. And it's right there in downtown Birmingham and provides the same function that the tech plays, which is an empowerment function for schools in particular, kids in particular, to give them a sense of what they can become if they hang with science and technology.
That's really cool. And how's your transition going to Silicon Valley?
Well, we love Silicon Valley. I love being here, and especially I love the sense of optimism. I love the resources that are here. I feel like this is the future of America. There's so much diversity, so many opportunities to say this is who we are becoming as a nation. And then, of course, I love the tech because the tech is basically saying the future belongs to those who can understand and use science and technology. I love being a part of that struggle to help especially kids on the margin of society claim what they can become. First-generation Americans right here in California and everyone to become who they can become in this great country.
Talk to us a little bit about the mission of the Tech Museum.
The mission of the tech has always been to inspire the innovator in everyone. And we have a vision that we would inspire learning and invigorate innovation locally, nationally, and globally. So that's our mission and our vision.
Excellent. And in your short time there, what have you found to be some of the assets that are going on at the museum, and what's your sense of the future? Maybe we'll start with the first piece.
The great assets. So we have some programs that are world-class. The Tech Awards is a world-class program which focuses on technology benefiting humanity. The Tech Challenge is a terrific science competition that has been going for 25 years now, our oldest program. It's also a world-class science competition. So those assets are terrific. The staff is terrific as well. So they're just raring to go. And then the board has a great sense that we want to break the mold here. We want to do museums differently. So they're not afraid of risk. They're bringing some resources to bear, and they're willing to recreate the museum experience to the extent that it is a true place that's a resource to the community and an empowerment for kids. We want to be significant. We do not want to be merely successful, and the board has signed up for that charge.
That's great. And who's leading your board?
Ann Bowers has been the chair, and the new chair is Chris DiGiorgio, who is the lead partner here at Accenture.
Yes.
Ann will stay with it, and she has for a while. But we have great board leadership from across the valley, and I'm really looking forward to working with Chris because his focus on strategy his focus on positioning the organization to be very strong for the foreseeable future.
That's great. You're listening to the CEO Show here on 1590 KLIV. I'm guest hosting tonight. I'm Dennis Chima of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, filling in for Carl Guardino. And I have as my guest tonight here on the CEO Show, Tim Ritchie, the president of the Tech Museum of Innovation here in San Jose. If you'd like to join our dialogue or ask Tim some questions about the museum or share your experiences, you can reach us at 408-475-1590. Tim, talk to us a little bit about challenges. What kind of challenges are there at the museum that you're trying to overcome?
Probably the biggest challenge is converting from a traditional museum experience to one that is a lot more engaging, a lot more hands-on, a lot more design challenge in its the way people experience it. So all science museums are trying to go through this challenge. How do we become most relevant to the community?
Yeah.
And people really haven't experienced what they will experience if they come to the tech over the next 10 years. We are going to change everything. There will be greater levels of engagement, greater levels of inspiration. But because it hasn't been done before, we have to lead with a vision and then get people to sign on to that vision. Once we get the resources to do that, put some things in place, then we will be off to the races.
And as you think about some of the other entities in the region, the Exploratorium, the Chabot Center, et cetera, how will the tech compare to those, and what kinds of advantages do you think the tech has over those sister entities?
Well, I think the place to begin is what our real niche is.
Yeah.
Because it is not only a unique niche in this community, it's a unique niche in the country, and that is our focus on applied technology. So Exploratorium, in my opinion, is the greatest science center in the country as it relates to basic sciences. I love Exploratorium, and I learn a great deal from it. And Chabot has its focus, and everyone has their own niche. Our niche is on applied technology. That's a huge advantage because it points to our greatest asset. And our greatest asset is what lies outside the museum. It's not what lies inside it. And it's the intellectual capital of the universities and the businesses and the institutions of Silicon Valley. So what will separate us from any place, whether in this valley or in the country, is how we work with Silicon Valley partners to show how technology can make the world better.
What are some of those examples of how a company, for instance, or a research institution can get involved with the tech?
Well, there's a couple. I would point to one university relationship with Stanford, and Stanford has Stanford at the Tech, which it brings their genetics program in, and we do some amazing things in a wet lab type program and other things involving forensics and the ways you use genetics to both solve problems and improve health. So the partnership with Stanford is a good example of that. A second example would be a partnership we've had over the past year with a terrific robotics company in Menlo Park called Willow Garage. And they bring their incredible robot, PR2, to the tech. And we work with visitors to help program the robot, to establish some design challenges. So once again, it's Willow Garage's intellectual capital. It's our facility. So we convene people, they bring their intellectual capital, the visitors have an amazing experience, unlike any they could have anywhere else in the world.
Excellent. Talk to us a little bit about how Silicon Valley as a whole fits in. So how does the community, how do other partners from the nonprofit sector, schools, how do they all fit into where you want to take the museum?
Well, that question can be answered in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
The spirit of Silicon Valley is an important goal. It's the holy grail for us. So we want visitors to come in and experience Silicon Valley. And what does that mean? I think that means somehow that visitors will come and see, oh, we can use technology to solve problems. We can take risks. We can innovate. This is a social and a collaborative space. So Silicon Valley at one level is our muse, and we want the museum to reflect all of that. And that's a very difficult thing to do, but I think we will accomplish that in the years to come. The second thing is that not only is Silicon Valley our muse, but Silicon Valley is our customer, and especially those people who are on the margins of society here. So we think that poverty, we think that need, we think that those sorts of things may not be right here in the Golden Valley of Silicon Valley. But in fact, 25% of many of the school systems in Santa Clara County, the students won't graduate. We have a lot of first-generation Americans who are on the lower end of the economic spectrum. They need what we have to offer. The future, their future, rises and falls with their ability to use science and technology. We want to meet that future, and that future is right here in Silicon Valley.
You're listening to the CEO Show here on 1590 KLIV. My guest tonight, Tim Ritchie, president of the Tech Museum of Innovation here in San Jose. I'm Dennis Chima of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and I have the great pleasure of guest hosting tonight. If you'd like to join our discussion, you can reach us at 408-475-1590. We're going to take a quick traffic break at the moment. We'll be back right after these words.
And good evening to you. Your 1590 KLIV news time is 7:14. I'm Josh Doherty. Taking a quick look at your South Bay traffic. We'll be doing it on the 15s for the rest of the hour. And your commute is looking pretty bad right now. We got a couple accidents. 101 South at Willow. This one is a two-car accident blocking the third lane. CHP was last on this scene as of 7:13. Then starting at 7 o'clock, 237 East. On the Lawrence Expressway on-ramp, you have another accident. This one is actually a huge one. Big five-car accident blocking the middle lane. CHP there since 7:09, trying to clear that out of the way. Then if you're on 880 North, the Dixon Landing Road on-ramp, poor guy stuck on the right-hand shoulder due to a hit-and-run. CHP is there as of 6:58. He's still trying to clear his car off the freeway as well. Got a couple slowdowns. 101 going northbound from Moffett Boulevard all the way up until Rangsdorf Avenue. That's very slow. Traffic moving between 5 to 15 miles an hour. And then 101 south from Lawrence Expressway all the way down to Trimble Road. That traffic is moving along somewhere between 25 to 30 miles an hour. And then 237 East, like I said, that accident earlier, it's got a lot of slow traffic from Lawrence Expressway all the way back to the 880 junction. The traffic is moving there between 15 to 20 miles an hour. Back to Dennis Chima and the CEO Show.
Thanks, Josh. Welcome back to the CEO Show. My guest tonight, again, is Tim Ritchie, president of the Tech Museum of Innovation here in San Jose. Is the use of the word museum a bad word these days?
It actually is a bad word. We can't just think of a better one.
Yeah.
You know, we try to say, are we a center? We're not a center. We're not really a museum. We want to be a resource, but we couldn't call ourselves the Tech Resource Innovation Hub. So I don't know. We do want to be a tremendous resource to this community. We want people to come back and back again because they get something of value. Is that what you do in a museum? Maybe, I don't know, but it is a complicated word for it.
And as you think about the Tech Museum of Innovation and San Jose and all the schools and districts around here, how do you get out into communities? So how does the museum operate outside of the walls of the structure?
That's actually an extremely important question, and so we have some very specific relationships. We were asked to become a significant partner to a particular elementary school, Kennedy Elementary School. So we're heavily embedded in that particular school to help them transform into a science, technology, engineering, and math-focused school. And then we have a broad-based program, outreach program with a Tech Challenge, where we'll serve 1,500 kids this year from around the state. So that gets us out in the community. We also are the lead partner in what's called the Power of Discovery program. So we do after-school programs and help coordinate that for 250 programs from around the Bay Area. So we get out as much as we can, realizing that really where the action is sometimes is in the after-school programs. Mm-hmm. Thousands and thousands of kids need what we have to offer. In fact, that's one of the things I feel most strongly about, in that right now we're serving 1,500 kids in our Tech Challenge program. We should be serving 15,000 kids. There's so much need. So getting outside the walls of the museum is a real priority.
Tim, talk to us a little bit about the Tech Challenge, if you wouldn't mind elaborating a bit on that. And if you want to bring it from 1,500 to 15,000, how do you go to scale? So first question is, for our listeners, what is the Tech Challenge? What do students get out of it? And when does that happen?
Okay, so the Tech Challenge, which has been going now, this will be its 26th year,
wow,
is a problem that needs to be solved by a group of kids, and it involves applied technology. Now, tends to be a very simple problem that can be solved with with modest materials. So part of the whole focus is here is to have a low barrier to entry. So last year, the problem was that a bridge has collapsed, a person has fallen. Your job is to rescue them. And we build these big rigs. This one looked like the Golden Gate Bridge. And students used somewhat complicated things on occasions, like robotics, sometimes very simple things like, Dixie cups put together to form a tunnel, whatever it took to rescue the person. And what it builds is it builds teamwork. It builds a sense of that science is for them. It helps people understand that design challenge is as important as the underlying science and technology. So this year, the challenge is to land delicate instruments, in this case a raw egg, on an asteroid, in 3 different parts of an asteroid in order to mine the asteroid. And so they will have to launch this egg into 3 different parts of an asteroid, and we'll see how they do.
Sounds messy.
Could be, should be. That's what life is.
That's right. So how do you bring something like that to scale?
Actually, Dennis, I don't know the answer to that. And it's something we're struggling with because 1,500 kids is actually pretty large. We'll have 5,000 people at the Tech for the competition. It's massive. It's wonderful. It produces extremely good results. We have lots and lots of kids say that I became an engineer because of the Tech Challenge. We can show that we've changed lives. But we've done it this way for 25 years. Now we've gone to a threshold and say, wow, we may have to actually do things differently. And so Silicon Valley style, we're learning to adapt. We're thinking differently. We're trying to get some help on this to figure out how to maintain its strength, but also double it 10 times.
Yeah. And you mentioned the low barriers, particularly for schools that don't have those robotics programs, but they have kids that really want to get their hands dirty, both figuratively and literally. How do you engage those schools?
That is extremely important. So we recruit 40% of our participants in the Tech Challenge are from schools known as Title I schools from very poor communities. We actively recruit in those communities, and that is an important part of this Tech Challenge, that when we go forward, we maintain this ability for people from all over to participate with very low barriers to entry.
You're listening to the CEO Show here on 1590 KLIV. My guest tonight is Tim Ritchie, the president of the Tech Museum of Innovation here in San Jose. I'm Dennis Chima of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. It's a great pleasure for me to be here tonight to guest host the CEO Show. Please do join us every Tuesday night at 7 p.m., and we have a repeat performance on Sundays at 3 p.m., and you can join our conversation at 408-475-1590, and thanks again for joining our show. Tim, you mentioned also the Tech Awards, and that does have a global profile. Talk to our listeners a little bit about the Tech Awards and what those mean to the museum and what those mean to your mission and vision.
So the Tech Awards show how technology benefits humanity. And just think about it this way. In 2050, there will be 9 billion people on this planet. Unless we think of technological solutions to things like food safety, water safety, energy supply, we will not be able to sustain life on this planet as we know it now. In fact, we may tear each other apart. However, there will be technological solutions to those problems. We will figure it out if we put our minds to it. And the Tech Awards celebrates all of that. There are 5 categories: technology that benefits education, the environment, health, young innovators, and what's the 5th one? It's out there. Anyway, so we focus on all of those things and then bring people from around the world, and it's just amazing the innovations that people have to, economic development's the next one, economic development. The innovations, simple innovations that people are using to really make a huge impact on the community. We bring them here. 1,500 people from Silicon Valley will attend a gala. Some of Silicon Valley's most prominent people, and they are inspired that night to bend their energies, change what they do to focus on how their considerable intellectual capital can be used to solve the world's most pressing problems.
Give some examples of a few things that you've come across in looking at the history of the Tech Awards and some of the things that excited you.
I'll give you an example that's very current. 2 years ago, We Care Solar was a Tech Laureate. They were a winner. That's what a Tech Laureate is. And They build a suitcase that provides lighting to hospitals and to places where people are doing surgery, because a lot of times surgeries, especially in OBGYN situations, were being done at night with either no light or with a candle or maybe with a very small light, and it was a very unsafe circumstance. So We Care Solar brought this basically suitcase level solar device in to provide lighting for medical devices. Fast forward 2 years, in a couple weeks, we're going to have something called We Share Solar, where we're inviting people to come to the tech and help build some of these suitcases in 2 weeks, and that we will then send on to Sierra Leone. I believe that program is already filled up with participants, but maybe not, and they could perhaps check our website at thetech.org. But that's an example where there was a local company that's building suitcases to benefit humanity. We're now bringing it back to the tech and making it a program where our participants, our visitors, can get involved with this project as well.
That's great. It's a great way to harness the community and make people feel good about not only the technology, but just giving of themselves. Yeah, well done. Talk to us a little about your transition from the South out here to Silicon Valley. What excites you about Silicon Valley, and boy, how is it different?
Well, I do think its biggest difference is the level of optimism about solving problems. And there is more wealth here too. So there's more things that we can do. I think the tremendous amount of diversity, human diversity out here, gives it a wonderful kind of new world feel. I do think that what I get excited about is being in a place that's sort of an embodiment of the future, not the past, an embodiment of the way the world can be, making the world safe for diversity, for instance, solving problems through education, through science, through technology. There are many things also about California that are amazing, the natural environment and so forth. I do love the San Francisco Giants winning the World Series. That was terrific as well.
Well said. Most surprising thing about living here in the Bay Area, aside from the housing costs?
That would be it. I was just about to say the housing costs, and you said aside from the housing costs. I guess just that people are people. Maybe what's surprising is how unsurprising it is, how similar it is. There's a great kindness here. I did spend a year in Boston, and it's very different than Boston, I think. I think the vibe out here is kinder and gentler, unless you're stuck in San Francisco in traffic, in which it's not kinder and gentler. But I think that the kindness and the optimism, the diversity are all these things that I just thrill to.
You're listening to the CEO Show here on 1590 KLIV, and my guest tonight is Tim Ritchie, president of the Tech Museum of Innovation here in San Jose. I'm Dennis Chima with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. If you'd like to join our discussion, you can reach us at 408-475-1590. That's 475-1590. And coincidentally, you're listening to KLIV 1590 here on your radio dial. Tim, the museum that you managed in Birmingham, and then later you worked for a nonprofit organization for people with developmental disabilities, serving them in the community. How did you get there from your law background and your public policy background? Did the two make sense, or did it sort of evolve?
So the thread that unites my life really is this fundamental belief in the value of a single human individual. And so when I was in law school, I worked on death row, for instance, and spent some time in North Carolina's death row. I worked in a poverty law clinic in Mendenhall, Mississippi. And I got to do some of that as a lawyer, but not too much. So I left my law practice and worked in public housing in Birmingham for a long time. And the thread from working in public housing to working with people with disabilities to working in museums all comes back to what can I do to use who I am to help an individual become who they can be. Mm-hmm. And that's how it's all linked up.
That's great. You're listening to the CEO Show here on 1590 KLIV. We're going to take a break for a traffic report. We'll be back with the CEO Show. Thanks for listening.
And your 1590 KLIV news time is 7:28. Josh Doherty here with you, taking a look at your South Bay highways. Just got a couple accidents here to look out for, starting on 237 East, the Lawrence Expressway on-ramp. This reported at 7 o'clock. You got an accident here, two-car accident, blocking the 2 lanes. CHP on the scene there since 7:09. They're still trying to work this out, trying to get this off the freeway, and it's also unknown if there are injuries over there. Another accident that's still sticking around here, 101 North, the Holly Street off-ramp. This one first reported at 6:18, last updated by CHP as of 7:20. 3 cars there. They are partially blocking the first lane. It's also in the center divide as well. Taking a look at some slowdowns here real quick as well. 101 North, going from 85 south to Rengstorff Avenue. That traffic is moving between 15 to 20 miles an hour. And then 101 South, you got one spot of slow traffic. Santa Monica Expressway, that's moving along 20 miles an hour. Then 237 East. That accident there has caused a significant slowdown as well, going from Lawrence Expressway all the way down to the 880 junction. That's moving along between 30 to 40 miles an hour. Now back to the CEO show with Dennis Chima.
Thanks, Josh. Welcome back, and thanks for listening to the CEO show. And we look forward to a great 2013 here on the show, and we appreciate the great work that our team here at KLIV is doing. My guest tonight is Tim Ritchie, the president of the Tech Museum of Innovation. Tim, as you think about the museum and 2013, what does that look like, and what excites you in the year ahead?
2013 will be the first time that people begin to see the big changes that are going to be characterizing the next 9 or 10 years. So, for instance, this weekend we will open the Tech Studio. The Tech Studio will be about 3,000 square feet of space devoted to showing how exhibits are made. We'll actually have exhibits made on the floor. We have our CNC router that's coming in, laser machine, rapid prototyping. It will be a space where people themselves can use some of this equipment. So it's like a fabrication lab on the floor. That will then percolate into the summer where we do some design challenge learning on the floor with robotics. So people will get a sense of the museum as workshop, the museum as resource. And I'm excited about that because it will redefine how people experience the museum. 2013 will also be the year we have the Star Wars exhibit. And so it's the last stop of a great exhibit, the tour for Star Wars, which will begin in the fall and go through the winter of next year. 2013 will also be where we have a new exhibit on health on our second floor, showing how technology can benefit our health. 2013 will also be a time when we have a fabulous, tech challenge. We've already talked about that. I would say the thing I'm most excited about, though, are these initial steps where we have these new levels of engagement, where museum as workshop, museum as place, museum as resource, because then people, schools, families, others will experience the museum in new ways.
That's great. And that idea of that hands-on experience as opposed to going to look at dinosaur bones or going to look at a computer do something. It's just amazing to think about a workshop, seeing things happen, seeing people build things and solve problems and participating in that in some way.
Yes, and I think the big difference here is there are plenty of interactive museums, but our focus is going to be not only on it being interactive individually, but also interactive in the way that Silicon Valley is interactive. That means it will have to be social, it will have to be collaborative, it will have to be open-ended, it will be difficult. It'll be the kind of thing that Silicon Valley experiences. So we not only will build an exhibit environment, but we'll build things around it that you would see in a typical Silicon Valley office area. So whiteboards where people can work on stuff together, people that sit in different kind of arrangements, spaces where people can collaborate in different kinds of ways so that when they come in, they say, oh, this is how Silicon Valley works. This is how innovation happens. This is how people try things and fail and then try things and succeed. So building all of that out will be a very different kind of experience. Dennis, there's one other thing I'd really like to talk about, and that is that we will also have a special focus on how technology can improve learning.
Right.
So we know that the traditional classroom is struggling to keep up, and we know that there's a lot of technology out there that can have a huge impact in the classroom, but that people are struggling to figure out, how do I do that? How do I do blended learning? How do I use technology in the best way to improve learning? So we're going to have a considerable focus on how technology can improve learning, and we're going to create something called the Center for Learning with Technology. That won't be in the museum itself, And the target audience will be more like content leaders and principals and superintendents. But that's going to be another focus of 2013
That's
that
great.
I think is very important.
That is so important. At the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, our organization and our members and our foundation has worked for a number of years in providing content training to teachers in mathematics, really getting teachers to have strong foundations in math, particularly K-5 teachers that are really trying to teach a broad spectrum of curriculum and put out fires all day, but really to give them the opportunity to get their hands dirty in mathematics and to think about how we might get teachers and curriculum leaders and others to dig down into technology. I know many institutions are doing that here in the region, but just to have additional shoulders to the wheel would be wonderful.
Well, we're right on the cusp of a real revolution, and
Yeah.
some schools have already embraced it. But it feels to me a little bit like personal computers might have felt in, say, 1990, where they really hadn't produced the kind of productivity yields people would have thought. But now, so many years later, it's obvious what a difference computers have made to people's productivity, to the whole workplace, and they have achieved and surpassed what we thought they would do for us. And we see things in our phones and the like. But there was a time back in, say, 1990 when people were naysayers and saying this hasn't produced the kind of change that we thought. The same thing is happening right now in ed tech, technology for education, where the early adopters are beginning to see big gains. But 5 or 6 years from now, everything could be different if people get a vision for how to employ technology in the classroom.
So when is the paperless office going to come about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember those very discussions back when I was practicing law. Right. But
Yeah, that's the perfect example of a place that needs a paperless office.
that's right.
Yeah.
And that I do think that in this particular case, the other exciting thing is so many of the impressive innovations are coming from Silicon Valley itself, things like the Khan Academy and other things. So we are on the cusp of a real revolution that's going to impact and empower a lot of people who are on the edge of society right now.
You're listening to the CEO Show here on 1590 KLIV. My guest tonight is Tim Ritchie, president of the Tech Museum of Innovation here in San Jose. And I'm Dennis Chima of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, filling in for Carl Guardino. And thanks for joining us here on the CEO Show. You can listen to our show every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. and a repeat performance Saturday at 3 here on 1590. Sunday at 3 here on 1590 KLIV. And Tim, I was going to ask you about social media. That's exploded over the last number of years. And how does that fit into what a museum, small m, has to do?
Well, I think that in our experience, I think that social media will be embedded in the way people express what they're doing on the floor. So if it's going to be social and it's going to be collaborative, and they're going to have their phones with them, they're going to have their iPads with them or whatever, people will be able to then broadcast out what they're doing and involve people. So I don't think we would have a specific exhibit on social media itself.
Yeah.
It would just be embedded in every single thing we do, just like it's embedded in everything we do right now.
Right. Now, your wife is a physician,
Yes, she is.
and so she's working out here in the Bay Area with you as well.
Yes, she's a geriatrician and she works with palliative care, and she's at UCSF. It's been a wonderful transition for her as well. She loves being at UCSF. She was actually given an endowed chair there. So it worked in a marvelous way for us as a couple to come. We wouldn't have come if we couldn't have come as a couple, and it just happened.
Well, that's great. Congratulations, and we're lucky to have you. And as I think about your career, looking at your great work in undergraduate school and your law degree, who inspired you? How did you get into all this craziness?
Well, I think like many people, my father inspired me the most because at an early age, he got involved with community development. Even though he was a salesman and an engineer, he got involved in our local community and helped start something called the Highland Community Ministries. And I saw his compassion for and love for the community. That was the biggest thing. Where I went at Davidson College, Davidson's ethic is the ethical imagination. They really want to see people employ their imaginations to make the world a better place, and that's what they celebrate at Davidson. And then at Duke Law School, the eventual dean there, Catherine Bartlett, she too had that same drive and push for the ethical imagination. when I clerked for the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, he too had that same focus on how can I do what I do to make the world a better place. So I've had great mentors all my life.
And what do you enjoy most about being the president of the Tech Museum?
I enjoy working with an unbelievable group of staff people who really believe they can make the world a better place. And they're so smart and they're so competent. I think it will be, especially on our exhibits team, the best exhibits team in the world.
Well, I'm not sure I heard much that you said tonight after you said Star Wars exhibit. So I'm excited about that as a Star Wars junkie.
Well, you know, it is true that we are inspired by things where we show that the power, in this case, the good side of the Force overcomes evil. So hopefully we'll all succeed here, Dennis.
Well, looking forward to it. And as you think about the organization, how big is the organization? How many staff? What's the annual operating budget of the Tech?
The annual operating budget is $13 million. We have approximately 85 full-time staff, about 40 part-time staff. We have a big goal for renovation of the Tech over the next 10 years of a $50 million goal.
Wow.
We have 37 members of our board of directors, and that's always important to continue to refresh over the years so that we reflect, what we need to do to accomplish our goals in the community.
And a volunteer corps that helps out at the museum?
Yes, it's an amazing thing. That is one of the other big differences between the Bay Area and any place else I've lived. We have 300 active volunteers at the Tech, and my sense is that other area institutions also have vast numbers of volunteers. Mm-hmm. It is a huge part of what we do.
Any entities, museums, et cetera, around the country, around the world that you've seen and have inspired you or you want to just blatantly steal from?
Well, we would blatantly steal from everyone, of
Good.
course, if it's excellent. I have always learned from the Exploratorium. I think it is a terrific place for basic sciences, and especially the way they fuse art and science together. And so I think that it's great to have them as a neighbor. There are some smaller museums that are really embracing design challenge learning around the country. The New York Hall of Science is not a smaller museum. New York Hall of Science in Queens is a partner, mm-hmm. and so it's good to work with them. A smaller museum in Albuquerque, Explora, we learn a lot from them, the way they do design challenge learning. There's a new-ish museum in Calgary called TELUS Spark, and so those are really our partners in a focus on design challenge learning. But what's also interesting is how much we're learning from the for-profit sector and the not-for-profit sector. So, for instance, the innovation lab at Kaiser Permanente, for instance, we could spend all day learning from them. We could spend all day learning from IDEO. We could spend a mm-hmm. lot of time learning from the D School at Stanford. And we do all of those things. We have partnerships which help us learn. So it's not just museums where we learn. In fact, museums may be kind of far behind. And that's another reason why it's so exciting to be right here in Silicon Valley, because the startups and even the ones that aren't startups, like a Google Labs, there's so much to learn from that. Probably more to be learned from that than really from the museum sector.
And partners with NASA or other government agencies?
Strong partnerships with NASA. We, for instance, were chosen to host an exhibit for NASA last year on the space station. Mm-hmm. So NASA's great. Area businesses like Lockheed and the space exploration area, very strong relationships there. University partnerships, I mentioned Stanford, but San Jose State, we have a very strong relationship with them in a lot of areas. So the partnerships is a key part of what we do.
Great. You're listening to the CEO Show here on 1590 KLIV. My guest tonight, Tim Ritchie, president of the Tech Museum of Innovation here in San Jose. And we appreciate your listening to us. I'm Dennis Chima of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and we're just going to take a quick break, and I'm going to hand it over to Josh for perhaps one of the greatest problems to solve at the Tech Museum in 2013, Silicon Valley traffic. Josh?
Well, fortunately, there's not much of a problem right now, Dennis. It's actually starting to clear up a bit. If you're heading home, just a couple more incidents here. Actually, 101 North at the Holly Street off-ramp. This one's still going on. First reported at 6:18. There's tow trucks on the scene of the accident, 2 cars there in the center divide, partially blocking the first lane. Still trying to get those out of there. CHP has been on the scene there since 7:20. Like I said, though, everything else is looking fantastic out there. All your major highways, Highway 17, 280, 880, 101, they're all running smoothly. And, yeah, back to you, Dennis.
Sounds good, Josh. Thank you. You just blew our thesis out of the water that technology will solve all problems. Apparently, time will heal all wounds. I guess if we just waited out global warming and famine and all the other things that we'll have to solve, will just take care of themselves.
Well, I hope so, Dennis.
Well, they'll take care of themselves probably in a bad way.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
if we wait them out.
They'll take care of us.
You're listening to the CEO Show here on 1590 KLIV. My guest tonight, Tim Ritchie, the relatively new president of our own Tech Museum of Innovation here in San Jose. I'm Dennis Chima of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. Thanks for joining us here on the CEO Show. You can join us every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m., and we have a repeat performance on Sundays at 3, and we have all sorts of great stuff on our website at the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, as well as KLIV's website. So thanks again for tuning in. Tim, we're going to treat you to the first lightning round of the 2013 calendar year here at the CEO Show. We've changed up the questions again for all of our veteran listeners, but looking forward to having your answers, and hopefully your staff will learn something new about you, or I'll pull something out of you. Maybe there'll be tears or something to that effect. First question, what kind of music do you prefer, and is there a particular musical artist or band that is your all-time favorite?
I love anything lyrical. My Pandora playlist is very eclectic. Yo-Yo Ma, acoustic guitar, Canadian brass, indie music like Ingrid Michaelson and the Weepies.
The Weepies, that's a new one for me. Favorite meal that you personally prepare?
Cider stew. Great recipe from the family that it's like a big soup, and it's fabulous.
Beef?
Beef.
All right. As a leader in our community, is there a specific rule or code that you personally live by?
I can answer that in two ways. First of all, I am a Christian, so of course I would want to follow Christ. But I think the other way to put that is the key thing is the essential value of each human being. That's my guide, the essential value of each human being.
Well said. Tim Ritchie, your favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving.
All right. Is it the food or the football?
It's the family, Dennis.
I guess they have to be there. Name 3 people, living or dead, that you would like to have over to your home for a dinner party or Thanksgiving.
Well, one is my brother, Dan. That won't mean anything to your visitors, but he's one of my mentors. I like to have the president, Barack Obama, and Francis Collins, head of the NIH.
Great. Would there be a grant request in that dinner with Francis Collins?
Absolutely.
Who do you believe is or was the best president of the United States, and in one sentence, why?
Washington, because he set the standard for each succeeding president regarding power and service.
Great answer. What's the next item to fulfill your bucket list?
Learn to bake bread. I always mess up the yeast.
Probably a better climate in the Bay Area than in Birmingham to
I'm
bake
looking
bread.
forward to it.
Yeah, good. At what time do you start your workday?
7:30 or so. A lot of times earlier, but 7:30 or so.
5 words that best describe you?
Well, I hope this is right. I think people would say I'm believable, idealistic, family-oriented, competitive, and then Christian.
Great. And what's on your nightstand? What are you reading these days?
Well, I always have a lot of books on my nightstand. So literally, my grandfather's edition of the Swiss Family Robinson is on there. It's an 1895 edition. It's wonderful. I've just gotten the book about Thomas Jefferson by John Meacham called The Art of Power. It's new, and Meacham is a wonderful Pulitzer Prize winner. And then I've just ordered this fabulous memoir by Mark Richard called House of Prayer Number 2. He's a Los Angeles writer, and he's just amazing. So I'm looking forward to digging into that. I just finished a bunch of books, but those are the ones that are on that nightstand now.
E-reader, or it sounds like you've got the old school books.
Definitely. You know, if I read an e-book at night, I can't sleep. I buy the whole business about backlit stuff making it difficult to sleep. So reading up from your iPad or watching television, I don't do any of that. I have to have a hard copy book, and it can't be about anything that will upset me. It can't be about politics. It can't be about theology. It can't be about work. So either poetry or something like that, I've just said.
Good. Well, maybe your iPad is talking to you, or the government's reading your thoughts or something.
Yeah,
like
maybe so.
How can folks find out more about the Tech Museum?
Well, you should start with a website
Yeah.
at thetech.org and really just come down. Come visit us. One thing people should know about the Tech, for instance, is that it's free if you're in a school group. We are the only major institution that provides admission free for all school groups. So if you're in a school group,
great.
if you're a teacher, bring your class. If you're a family member, become a member. I mean, if you're a family, become a family member because it's relatively inexpensive and you can come all year long. And it will be a great resource to you. So come visit us and at least check us out on the web.
That's great. Are there any? Does the Tech have any relationship with other museums where you can get a pass and travel the Bay Area, I guess, and museum
Yes.
hop?
There is a passport program through ASTEC, the Association of Science and Technology Centers. However, if it's local, the discount isn't quite as much as if it's a national. So if you happen to be a member at the Tech and you go to the Exploratorium, there will be a discount, and a reasonably good one. But if you were to go to McWane Science Center in Birmingham or the New York Hall of Science, it would be free. So that's another benefit. If you travel and you become a member of one of these institutions, then you can go across the country at no cost.
Well, Tim Ritchie, it's been great to have you here on the CEO show. We congratulate you on your relatively new post as president of the Tech Museum. We're just so fortunate to have you on our team here in Silicon Valley. We're looking forward to hearing all the wonderful things that are happening at the Tech Museum, the Capitol campaign, the Star Wars exhibit, the Tech Challenge. Congratulations, and we're just really lucky to have you.
Thanks. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, I want to remind you that you can catch an encore performance of tonight's show right here on KLIV on Sunday at 3 p.m. And I want to thank our guest, Tim Ritchie, president of the Tech Museum of Innovation, and give a special thanks to our team here at KLIV, including our producer, Josh Doherty, for another great show. I'm Dennis Chima of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, filling in for Carl Guardino. Remember, you can find tonight's show and all past shows online at the Silicon Valley Leadership Group website, svlg.org. And tune in next Tuesday and every Tuesday at 7 p.m. to the CEO show. And keep your dial set here on Silicon Valley's news and information station 1590 KLIV.